acronyms, very complicated acronyms. And he will tell us a lot of detail about that. Please, go ahead.
Thank you very much. My name is Fredrik Öhrström. I usually work as a consultant, long before I worked at Spotify and Oracle. Maybe 5-6 years ago, I accidentally stumbled upon a different way of visualizing XML because I had to read a lot of XML. Since the last couple of years, I've been turning this discovery into an actual language and a tool. So if you ask yourself, you are a new developer who is not very experienced in XML. You're going to pick a config file and you're going to use it for your new program. Will you use the top way of presenting your config file for your users, or will you use the bottom one? Unfortunately, the truth is that the new developer will definitely pick the bottom one. And I know that every one of you, since you are very experienced in XML, clearly see through the XML, just like Cypher did in the Matrix movie when he saw all the green stuff falling. So for you, this question is not quite relevant, but for most other people like me, mere mortals, we like the keyword storage. Unfortunately, config files always grow in complexity. So eventually you will need XML expressibility or something similar, but by then it's too late. So XML loses. So our first goal, can we assist a human, give him cognitive assistance while working with XML? Yes, we can. We can present stuff as key values, key equals value. And the rule is very simple. If an XML element only contains text nodes and entities, we can present it as a key value. This is a way to do data-oriented XML in the XMQ format. Now, there is no root node in this one. XMQ actually permits statements without root nodes. So you use a tool to re-add the root node, or you can write the root node directly into the XMQ file. When you load XML or XMQ from a config file, contrary to JSON and other languages that want to map from the language itself to a specific object model, XML does not need that, and neither does XMQ. You just query the data file. And I think this is rather interesting because if you look at the previous attempts to do similar things like F10ML, they were seduced by this aspect of presenting the data storage file as objects in a language. I don't think that's necessary. I only think it works for JavaScript. So in this way, you can query XMQ files in the same way as if it was XML files. But here is the real problem. Do you see it? There is a space, there is a tab, there is a new line. There is a wide ideographic white space. Okay. We have a problem in XML. The white space situation comes from the history of XML, where you started with a text file and you introduced markup. So given the original text file and then adding markup, you get a conflicting situation. Some of the markup will belong to XML, some of the markup will, white space will belong to the content. And in XMQ, what I've done is that I separated the white space clearly in separating white space and content white space. And then the content white space is what is getting sent to the application that reads the XML file. And that content white space, in turn, can be significant or insignificant. But that depends on a lot of factors. What application it is. Is it a browser? Then you have CSS files. So let's take a look at an XML. We got a ship order, and to you, it looks obvious. In XMQ, it looks like this. Okay, looks pretty simple. Here's the trick with the white space. The XMQ file will remove the incidental indentation. This is a trick that comes from Java text blocks, where the source code formatting will be removed, but you will still maintain new lines. So in this text node, that it will be inside the XML, you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 spaces, and you have 1, 2, 3 new lines. Here you can visibly see that there is an extra new line at the end. You can see that we have 1 indentation and then 2 indentations. And this block here can be pretty. So here we have another example. XMQ makes it easy for you to see where the white space is. That is content white space. If you try to present this as XML, well, we have this problem. Can you make a new line before the pre? Yes, you can. Can you do anything inside the pre? Probably not, because it probably means pre-formatted. In the second case, you don't even know what you are allowed to do with the content inside the div class P, because it might be connected to a CSS file with whitespace preset, or it might not. So you're locked out. I consider this to be sort of a bug in XML, but it's fixed in XMQ by separating whitespace and content whitespace. If you do the opposite, that means that you remove all the separating whitespace. You get the compact form. The compact form is interesting because it created a symmetry, designed the language, which means that it flushed out a lot of bugs. So it's helped me solve a couple of things against comments. HTML and XML comments cannot handle new lines, but XMQ can. And of course, pretty printing is pretty size expensive, takes a lot of indentation. So it makes sense to have a compact form as well. Here's another example. We have HTML, and we have tried to pretty print this code. But you can see that after the S, we had to place the new line inside the element, because otherwise there would be a space. So there is a word, sleep, S-L-E-P. And if you don't do it like that, any new line pretty printing will introduce spaces in the output. In XMQ, it looks like this. So you can see clearly that there is no space between S and Li, and there is no space on, you get to P. And there is a single space before the nabla. So we have a tool already. So let's demo. Here's a config XMQ, and this is also what it looks like textually. We can take a look at the ship order. This is XML. And we just type ship order XML. And you get it pretty printed with colors in your terminal. The tool is already available for you, downloadable as a binary for Linux, Mac OS, and Windows. If you want to, you can pick it up in your browser, and it will pre-render an HTML page, and you can read the source code to your XML as XMQ in the browser. If we take a look at this file, this is a WIPO patent file storing RNA sequences for COVID vaccine patents. It's clearly not markup. This is data storage. And you can see that here. You see that inst qualifier, note, target, location. All of this is data storage. So it makes sense to take a look at it using XMQ. Here we want to page the XMQ within the terminal. We could bring it up in the browser. And you can see that, at least to me, it's more readable for data storage. It can also visualize HTML. So, if we take a web page, you can see the doc type, you can see HTML, you can see a lot of scripting. And the scripting just happens to have a little tabs in it. It's a lot of scripts. So we want to take a look at a cleaner HTML, where we delete using XPath all the script elements and the style elements. Now it's cleaner. And you can see that for something that in the old days was considered markup, you can see that we have a text node here, search/dot, because all the text nodes are green, so you can easily see them. But in otherwise, it's not much text actually. So even HTML today is mostly data storage, that's storing data about the layout. Another interesting, we can take a look at an SVG file. Oh, the tool also handles dark backgrounds. So if we take a look at this, here we have an SVG file created with Inkscape in XMQ format. You can see that XMQ handles all the namespaces, which is rather interesting for SVG because we can see sort of a historical view of how the different tools evolved. So SVG is an image format. Pseudopode is the first vector editor, free open source, that then was forked into Inkscape. So we have all these namespaces showing a historical history. And we can take a look at the, let's go back to the presentation. Something that you might already have seen when you see this XMQ, which is XML, it's 100% XML, is that it looks a little bit like JSON, doesn't it? But that was not the design goal. Was that I designed this language to work with XML. And then after the fact, I could see that there are similarities with JSON. So I wrote a JSON parser inside this tool. And the JSON parser was so similar to the XMQ that I could reuse the same callbacks that I used to build the DOM tree. The only thing that's needed is that you invoke a synthetic element name, because JSON objects does not have element names, so we insert an underscore instead, which is nice because the underscore is a valid element name in XML. And, well, you see there are only two more attributes needed. A signifies that this, if you want to turn it back into JSON, it will become an array that you can see here. And there is another attribute, S, which is used when something looks like a number, but you don't want it to be a number in JSON. Then you attribute it with S and say, yeah, this is going to be a string anyway. That's strange, isn't it? Two attributes and an underscore. And you have XML compatibility with JSON. So the XPath becomes simpler. You can do this, select, and you will understand where the underscore comes from. It's just an element. So I think Michael K. talked about this. Question about the object model, the data structure. Is this a unification? I don't know, but it's a different way to see JSON inside XML without having to have a completely separate data structure for JSON. And one very useful aspect of XMQ is when you write XSLT transforms. Because if you do not generate HTML or something like that, you have a problem where the indentation of the XSL transform source code will affect the output. So we have all sorts of settings here, method HTML, and other things like that. But if you don't use those in a proper way, there is a big risk that your source code in the transform will actually become part of the output. But all of that is solved by using XMQ, because in this case, there is actually no content whitespace, which you can see because there is no quotes. And in this particular case, this XSL transform works on use JSON. So we can see here that we can curl some REST API get the JSON, have XMQ work on the JSON, transform it, and then output an HTML page. Let's see if yes. So where is the problem? Don't we need HTML somewhere? We do. And I use HTML for markup inside the tool. Because when I render the output, the XMQ output, I present it as text, and then I insert coloring information, start to stop. And that has to be compatible both for the terminal, HTML, and TeX. So in that situation, I thought, well, of course, I should use XMQ for my own output. But it turns out, no, for markup, HTML is better. So I do use HTML inside the tool. So simple question, it was an experiment, but all of this turned into a lot of answers. What is the meaning between key value storage versus markup? We know that XML can store both. And now we've seen it. We just use a different way of presenting the XML. And if it's relevant, it looks better in XMQ. Or if it's relevant data-oriented, then it will look better in XMQ. So we have realized that whitespace can be solved if we take care of separating and content whitespace. Shrink all the separating whitespace, suddenly we have a compact form. But compact is not strictly a goal by itself. It's nice. It helps the symmetry of the language. But if you really want to go compact, you should go to machine binary XML. And you don't need an XMQ binary form because you have XML binary form, because XMQ is XML. We have config files. I use it all the time to debug complicated HTML pages and stuff like that, where I want to see things in a more easy to see way. And I also mentioned in the beginning, why do we want, or why do some people want to try to create languages and map to object models directly? It doesn't make sense. I think data storage is independent of object model of the language. So conclusions, XMQ is XML and HTML. You take control of the white space. It's better for human cognition. We have a surprisingly good mapping to JSON. There is tool support already. So you can go to this website, libxmq.org, and you can read about this tool. And you can find a link to the GitHub where the binaries exist for Linux, Mac, and Windows. And you can download them now and try it yourself if you want to. Thank you very much.
Thank you. We have a few minutes for a question. Oh.
Lovely, I really like it. Did you show any examples that I missed of mixed content?
What do you mean when we say mixed content?
I mean, marking up individual words or phrases within a paragraph.
I can do it like this. When I wrote my doc book for this conference, I wrote it in XMQ. Mm-hmm. So, this is what it looks like. We don't have mixed words here, but if we go down a bit, we have some quotes. Here, quote, "Tierceness is of minimal importance," and then citation. So this is what it will look like. And this is a border case, because this is actually sort of markup. But it looks okay, I think, in XMQ.
So when do you need quotes around the strings, and when don't you?
Very good. So the safe strings contain only no white space. So if we take a look at the ship order, you can see that ID equals numbers, but numbers doesn't mean anything. It's just text strings like XML. The point is that the number does not contain any white space. And it does not contain the reserved characters braces or parentheses, or the quote sign. So such values can be presented as a value without quotes. If you have sailing equals the empty string, that's 2 quotes. Then we have a single quote because within the address there is no other quotes. But in the coordinate, we have triple quotes to quote single quotes inside it. And if you have double quotes, you have to have, or triple quotes inside, you have to have quadruple quotes. So you can quote any text string using enough quotes, and you can comment. I didn't have time to go into the comments, but the comments are similar, slash, 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 star, and then you can comment anything, including recursive comments, and then you end with slash, star, slash, slash, slash. So that's the trick. You use equal amounts of quotes. The thing is that it might look complicated, but when you look at the output, when you analyze existing XML, it looks pretty good. So sometimes in XSLT, you end with a single quote, but that's usually the code. So you can just add a space, and then you don't have the problem. Yep.
There was one question from YouTube coming, so I will try to read it. Is XMQ similar to HACL, HashiCorp configuration language?
Sorry, which?
HashiCorp configuration language.
I don't know what that is, sorry.
Okay, so then it's hard to answer.
It's hard to, yeah.
So,
Thomas.
Hi, is there a grammar?
Yes, I got a handout, and it's actually in the article as well.
yeah,
So
it's in
anyone who
proceedings.
wants a summary of today's talk can bring it here.
Thank you. No more questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thanks.